Rankings reaction here. College football playoff top 25 ranking show preview, breakdown, discussion. Got a lot to say here. Josh George, college football time. Okay. Well, they have established a committee that will be instructed to plan an emphasis on winning conference championships, strength of schedule, and head-to-head competition when comparing teams with similar records and pedigree as part of a resume. What I just read to you is how the College Football Playoff Committee should pick their top 25. I've highlighted pedigree as part of the resume in green because I think pedigree is interpreted entirely the wrong way. I think too many people think it means blue bloods, money, or TV, which is probably why they put it in there. Anyways, we've got a lot to analyze. First of all, do not jump off a building because of these rankings. I'm showing you, I'm going to talk a little bit about change here. In 2020, I've got that on the left, the pre and post for 2020 there. And then on the right is 2019. Now in 2020, 0 teams that were in the top 5 at the beginning fell out. But out of the top 25, 6 teams ended up falling out. And then the biggest jump was Coastal Carolina, and they made it up 8 spots from the first to the last. And the biggest fall was Oregon, who dropped 10 spots. Now in 2019, over here on the right, I've got those two next to each other. Boogity boo. Well, look, 2 teams fell out of the top 5, and it was Penn State and Alabama. Out of the top 25, 5 teams fell out. The biggest rise was Baylor and Oklahoma, who went up 5 spots. The biggest fall was Alabama, who dropped 10 spots. Now we're looking at 2018 and 2017. 18 on the left, 17 on the right. Now, in 2018, 2 teams dropped out of the top 5, and Michigan was one of them, and the other team was LSU. And 6 teams dropped out of the top 25. OU made the biggest leap, jumping 3 spots. LSU had the biggest drop, dumping 8 spots in 2018. In 2017, one team dropped out of the top 5, and 6 teams dropped out of the top 25. USC made the biggest jump, jumping 9 spots. TCU had the biggest plummet, dropping 7 spots. Now, 2016 and 2015 here. In 2016, 2 teams, it's over here on our left, dropped out. 2 teams dropped out of the top 5, and 8 teams dropped out of the top 25. OU had the biggest climb, climbing up 7 spots. Auburn had the biggest plummet as they dropped 9 spots. And now, over here, 2015, 3 teams dropped out of the top 5. 6 teams out of the top 25. OU, once again, had the biggest climb, climbing 11 spots. LSU had the biggest drop, dropping 18 spots. And all of that to say the average is 1.7 teams will drop out of the top 5 over the course of these 5 seasons. And 6.3 teams will drop out of the top 25. The biggest climb will likely be 7 spots. The biggest drop will be about 10 spots. Now, here's some teams that are not in the top 25 that maybe they should be considered, at least in my opinion. We're going to go to the data. We're going to start with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns here. Look, they're 84th in strength of schedule. That's what really hurts them. They're a one-loss program with one loss to Texas, in which their defense allowed 38 points. And as a group of 5 team, I don't think it's enough, but when you're thinking about things like conference championships, they're first in the Sun Belt, something that could maybe help them late. Really, if they're first in their conference, I think the committee should really consider that and go, should take a little bit of notice. Maybe a team that should have got a little more consideration. Maybe a team that should have been elaborated on a little bit more. To Houston. Houston, a 7-1 team. They beat that Southern Methodist team, and they're listed as first in the American Conference, but 76th of strength of schedule. Honestly, as I go through this video, you'll see that that's really just not good enough right now. Southern Methodist, a 7-1 team, 55th in strength of schedule. Tanner Mordecai and Grant Calcaterra, they looked the part. On offense, looking good there. Really, the eye test is kind of there for them. People need to turn on the tape and watch this team. Yes, they lost the game. There's a lot of one-loss teams. There's a one-loss team in the top 4. So, really a team that I think should maybe be in this top 25. Should definitely a team to consider and to look at their resume and make people go, why isn't Southern Methodist in? Penn State. Here is some things. First of all, they have a 16-10 win over Wisconsin, who the committee put in. Their quarterback got injured against Penn State or against Iowa, and they ended up losing by 3 points, which is a game that they really almost won. Yes, they do have 3 losses. They have a loss to Iowa, a loss to the team that the committee has 5 in Ohio State, and their biggest win is over the committee's 13th ranked team in Auburn. So, a team that you might want to think about considering. Now, UTSA, they're 8-0. That's just about all I've got to say about that. They're first in Conference USA. It just shows that the committee doesn't respect winning teams that win games. They should be in the top 25. They're undefeated. Appy State here. 6-2 team. They're very competitive in the Sun Belt. They have a win over Coastal Carolina. And honestly, they just look really good on film when you turn it on. Coastal, Jeremiah Cradell, great coach, great option attack. This team looks really good. McCall looks like a really good quarterback. They look like a top group of 5 team. They have one kind of fluky loss. They're 64th in strength of schedule, which is really they could be ahead of some of these teams that are in the top 25, and I'll kind of hit that later where I'll point out where they're ahead of some teams that are in. So, yeah, probably a team that I think should be in right now. So, Arkansas, look, a 5-3 team. Their losses to an A&M, they beat an A&M team that's ranked 14th. They lost to their all 3 losses though are to teams that the committee has in the top 25, and their strength of schedule is 10th. Arkansas definitely should have been. Honestly, when I break it down for you, they're a team that I'd have in, definitely, even at the bottom half, in the top 25. Didn't get enough consideration. Purdue, I put them here to make a statement. First of all, here's the facts. They're 16th in strength of schedule. Maybe they don't have the prestige or whatever that word was, the pedigree of some of the other teams, and their blood's not bluey enough. But Purdue, 16th in strength of schedule, put out on an Iowa team 24-7. They just put them down. Okay, they're a team that really a 5-3 team that should absolutely be considered. Probably should be in this top 25. When you break it down, I may even pump out my top 25 here soon. Iowa, and this is going to be a long video, and I just stick with me. There's a lot of analysis here because this committee was just dead awful. Iowa State, 25th in strength of schedule. Bad loss to Iowa. But their strength of schedule is higher than Iowa and Pitt right now. A bad loss at West Virginia, which is a team that may be underestimated by many. And a bad loss to Baylor, which is a team that is in the top 25. But Iowa State should be, they're really close, I feel like, if not in, so to speak. But back to Purdue, their loss, two of their three losses are to top 25 teams from this committee in Minnesota and Notre Dame, and then Wisconsin. So all three losses there, and they have a top 25 win over Iowa, 24-7. So Purdue, man, come on, should be in. Pittsburgh's 25th. Look, Pittsburgh, they're 6-2, but here's why they're overrated. They lost to Western Michigan, a team in the MAC. They're 31st in strength of schedule. And are they better than Penn State? Not according to Winsipedia. So overrated, probably shouldn't be in. Probably one of those teams I was talking about. San Diego State, 7-1 out of the Mountain West. A team that has Brady Joke coaching them. They're 90th in strength of schedule. They played one top 25 team and they lost. Should not be ranked in the top 25. Coastal Carolina has a better strength of schedule at 64. So does Iowa State. So does Arkansas. Look, just compare those teams. Figure it out, committee. Should not be in. Fresno State has 2 losses. I know they beat San Diego State head-to-head, but Houston's undefeated. Their strength of schedule, yes, they have a head-to-head win over a group of, or over a Power 5 team. Well, guess what? So does Coastal Carolina. Fresno State is way too high for a 2-loss group of 5 team. Iowa, look, Iowa is simply overrated. I know the commissioner of this little committee is from Iowa, but I'm going to read some stats to you to prove that this team is definitely overrated, and it's definitely biased towards Iowa getting into the top 25. And it really helps the Big Ten that Iowa got in. It's freaking ridiculous. So, the last 2 weeks, they've lost 25.5-7 on average against Wisconsin and Purdue. They've got blown out. They've got slammed against the wall. Now, they're 19th in, to Wisconsin and Purdue. They're 19th in strength of schedule, but they're number 1 in punts per game in the Power 5, which is not something that winning teams have. And when you go back and you look at those last 2 games, you look at their season, they look like a bad team. They look like a team that is not a top 25 team. They look kind of like a cupcake, and it shouldn't be here. Wisconsin at 21. Well, head-to-head, they beat Iowa, and they throttled them. Yes. Now, they're 9th in strength of schedule also. They're 5-3. There's actually 12 teams that have two or less losses above them in the strength of are above them in record strength of record. Thank you. They lost by a combined 31.6 to 13. So got blown out in these three games. Michigan, Penn State, and Notre Dame. So a team that gets blown out should not, too bad, too well. Two of these teams are ranked, I guess. Penn State on the outside looking in should not be this high. Should be lower. Honestly, probably shouldn't be in general. Minnesota. Now, number 20 Minnesota, 6-2 team, but your 20th ranked team has a loss. They're 33rd in strength of schedule, and they have a loss to Bowling Green. And their strength of record is below Pittsburgh, Purdue, Iowa State, and Arkansas. All teams behind them. And they lost to Bowling Green. Our committee, your 20th ranked team, lost to Bowling Green. Sorry. NC State. Now, NC State is probably accurately rated here. This is one of the better decisions here. NC State is 6-2. They do have some bad losses, but they're favored against an 8-0 Wake Forest at -3, according to some early releases from Vegas odds for the November the 13th game at Wake Forest. So favored on the road to that team shows that they're a very talented team. That 2 overtime game against Clemson showed some perseverance. They have a bad loss, a 24-10 loss to Mississippi State, which the committee respected and put Mississippi State up high. I'll get to that later. And then they have a strange loss to Miami. Maybe a top 15, top 10, definitely top 20 team. I'm happy with this. I'm okay with this. NC State deserves to be here. Kentucky has lost their last 2 games. Kentucky has a really good defense under Mark Stoops, and they look like a top 25 team, definitely a top 25 defense. The biggest thing is how they lost to Georgia, although they did cover, but their strength of schedule is only sits at 35th, and for SEC, that's actually kind of at the bottom. So, because of that, they're probably accurately rated sitting in the back half of the top 20, Mississippi State is the highest 5-3 team. And you go, how is this team? This team plays no defense and all offense, and sometimes their offense doesn't even show up. How is Mike Leach? Mike Leach is a great coach, but how are they in? I like him as a coach. They're 22nd in strength of schedule. They've been really weird. They beat A&M, I guess. That's their best win, but they really haven't played anybody. The FPI has them at 21st. I don't know. Maybe they deserve to be in the top 25 as a 5-3 team, but probably not this high. 16 is Ole Miss. 6-2 team here. Ole Miss, they lost to Alabama 42-21, and and that was their first loss. They then got outdueled by Bo Nix and an offensive team with Matt Corral. You think, he's the Heisman guy. Maybe the eye test came into play here on this. Really, when you look at the numbers, they're 5th in strength of schedule. So they're a team that a 2-loss team that you might move up above some of the other 2 losses that you'll see. But honestly, I feel like they're accurately rated. BYU, overrated, 7-2, and they don't play in a conference. They're 50th in strength of schedule. and they're they're they have 2 losses to top 25 teams. They just haven't shown anything. They almost lost 2 of their first 3. So yeah, and the eye test kind of played a factor down low. So should not be this high, man. A&M, arguably the best win on the season. They did go out and beat the committee's number 2 team, and they beat Alabama, who coming into the year everyone thought was the best team in college football. Uh, so that's huge, and they do have a 69 or 62.9 chance to beat Auburn, who is ahead of them, which I think is ironic that they have such a good chance to beat the 13th ranked team. So I'll say A&M's accurately rated. Auburn is a very interesting choice. Not favored against A&M, although other than Alabama, they are the only team that controls their own destiny in the SEC West. And because if they win out, they will go to the championship game. They're 4th in strength of schedule, 22 in strength of record, though, which means they had a bad loss. And that 8 loss to Penn State, I think, is what's doing it. I think it's what's hurting them. Look, they'll get it. They could be one of those teams that really rises up this year. Like I say, they go out and beat Bama, they will rise up like the kids out of the cornfield. But we'll just have to see. For now, I think they're accurately rated. The Bears of Baylor sit at 12. 7-1 team, showing the record 34. Their losses to OSU, which is ahead of them. They're 13th in total offense and 10th in total defense right now, though. Really good, kind of scary one-loss team. They get to host OU here in a week. So we'll really get to see what they're made of. I think they're a really good team. Honestly, I think they might be a top 10 team. I think they might be a little underrated, but there's still some undefeated teams out there. So I'll say accurately rated because they do have that loss. And I just think you got to respect teams that go undefeated, you know. That speaks to pedigree. That speaks to resume. You look at somebody's resume, comparing the guy that got fired and the guy that they held down 9 jobs, never got fired. Who do you hire? Come on now. Anyways, Oklahoma State at 11. Look, Spencer Sanders, he's the turnover machine. He's been keeping the ball under his arm, though, been finding a way to win football games. They've only lost 1 to Iowa State, which is a team I talked about earlier. 13th in strength of schedule, which is really not bad. It's actually the highest in the Big 12, and they're the highest one-loss team in the Big 12. Really a team that's accurately rated for when you actually dissect, look at their resume, look at the film. I mean, gosh, this team might be a top 10 team, honestly. You know, top 15 for sure. We'll see. The back half of the Big 12 schedule is loaded. We'll see how they finish. Ranking-wise, yeah, this is where I'd rank them. Do I think they'll drop? Yes. But we just have to wait and see. Notre Dame's a team that I have as accurately rated a 1 loss, and it's the committee's 6th ranked team. It's a team that's considered by many to be a Power 5 team, even though they are an independent, and they haven't showed a lot, but they've got the pedigree. They almost lost to Florida State if you wanted to bring them down some. Really almost lost a couple of those games. Didn't look good early in the season. Maybe they've improved some. Maybe they could be down some, but not a bad 1-loss team. Wake Forest. I know everyone wants me to say that they're underrated, but here's the facts. Yes, they're 8-0. They're 54th in strength of schedule, 59th in strength of record. They're below. They've got 5 group of 5 teams ahead of them in strength of schedule. So they're up. They're like an 8-0 group of 5 team. In fact, when you look at their opponents' combined record at time of play, It's 15-21. In fact, their only team with a winning record that they've beaten currently is Army. So they really haven't played anybody. I mean, an 8-0 team that's a Power 5 team, I have no problem with them being in the top 10, but they're actually accurately rated just because they haven't played anybody. I mean, they're probably going to drop. So we'll just have, and they have the longest losing streak against top 10 opponents dating back to 1947. So there's a little fact about Wake Forest and why I expect them to drop. Oh man. Why is this team so low? It's almost ridiculous. 9-0. They have more wins than any team in college in FBS college football right now at 9 wins. They have turned a corner with Caleb Williams. The eye test says that they look way better. Yes, they're 30th in strength of schedule. They're 4th according to the Football Power Index, and would beat many of the teams. Would beat more than half of the teams ahead of them. A little math game. Michigan State. Michigan's got a loss, which are ahead of them. Ohio State's got a loss ahead of them. That's 2. Oregon's got a loss. Well, that's 3. Now Oregon lost to Kansas State. OU beat Kansas State. There's a little thing in the clause here, committee, I'd like to remind you about. It says head-to-head and comparable head-to-head matchups. OU beat Kansas State. Kansas State beat Stanford. Stanford beat Oregon. Thus, OU beat Oregon. That's the way the math adds up. Thus, OU should be ranked ahead of Oregon. OU's undefeated. Oregon's not. It's simple mathematics, committee. OU is not they need to be higher. They grind it out. They get wins, and their strength of schedule is in the top 30, and their FPI is in the top 4, and they've beaten opponents by an average of 24.8 points per game. You know, despite how it looks, at the end of the day, they're little 8-10 point wins. They've had some big ones over TCU and Texas Tech recently, and they're turning it around, and they've got the number up. 7 Michigan, 1 loss to Michigan State. Look, not a bad football team, but only 1 win against top 25 opponents here. Are they too high? I don't know. Look, Phil Steele was not that high on this team. Phil Steele, when he was analyzing things, he said he had OU in the top 2, and it just struck me because everyone talks about how he's one of the football geniuses. Didn't have Michigan up here, so maybe they should be fall back some. I actually think that they're accurately rated, though. Cincinnati's undefeated. I'm just gonna applaud the committee for putting a group of 5 team in there, I guess. Don't want to step on any toes, and this video's been too long. So Cincinnati at 6, cool. Ohio State, 1 loss to Oregon in a game that they just got outplayed from start to finish. They were behind almost the entire game. Didn't look good. How are they 5th? Answer me that. They're just they almost lost to Tulsa. Didn't look good in that game. Really kind of could have been. It just their eye test is just as bad as everyone else, is what I'll say. Oregon lost to a 3-5 Stanford. I've talked about how OU should be ahead of them. Yes, they're overrated. My goodness gracious. There's no other team in the Pac-12 that is ranked, so likely will drop. But we will just have to see. Michigan State's an undefeated Power 5 team. Look, Michigan State is not that bad of a football team. 8-0 in the Big Ten and 23rd in strength of schedule, which is good enough. And when you compare it to some of the other teams that are sitting right there, it's actually not bad. Alabama's number 2. I'm just going to say it's hard to say that they're overrated, but they lost a football game. How is the team in the top 4 that lost a football game? They lost to a Texas A&M team that has 2 losses. So technically, does that mean they have 3 losses? Anywho, yes, they're number 1 in efficiency. They're number 1 in strength of schedule. They're number 1 in defensive and offensive efficiency. We'll see. We will see. They have to play Georgia. Georgia's number 1 defense, number 1 in strength of record. So, absolutely the number 1 football team. College Football Playoff Committee absolutely got the number 1 team correct. I'm Josh George, College Football Video.